Okay, so I'd like to thank everybody that's able to attend today for our AP automation webinar, How to Guard Against Accounts Payable Fraud and Abuse. I just wanted to introduce Beanworks and Joey, who's going to be the presenter. So Beanworks has an exclusive partnership with Sage as their official AP automation provider, which is now available actually straight through as a Sage preferred solution. So they are an AP automation provider in North America. Sage AP Automation, powered by Beanworks, is designed to seamlessly integrate with your Sage 300 to save your team from time-consuming and error-prone tasks while maintaining complete control over the entire AP process. It also gives you total visibility from purchase orders to payments from anywhere. Just wanted to introduce Joey, who's going to be presenting. Joey's a senior account executive and sales manager at Beanworks, Sage AP Automation. He's been with them for around 3 years now. His role here is to help customers discover the wonders of AP automation through product demonstrations and one-on-one meetings. So yeah, if you'd like to take over, Joey, have at it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Rob, for the introduction. So again, my name is Joey. I'll be your host today. So what we're going to be covering today is going to be a lot of things about fraud. So today we'll be covering the impact of fraud, several examples of high-profile cases in the marketplace, the critical steps you can take to adopt and establish active controls to keep your organization secure. And then finally, we'll do a product demonstration of AP automation as a fraud tool, followed by a question and answer session at the end. So you will be free to ask questions through the chat in Zoom directly. So please ask questions throughout in the Q&A, and I'll be sure to address all of those at the end. So let's kick it off. Let's start with some of the most well-known tech companies in the world who you would think would have a strong control of their finances and fraud prevention. But between 2013 and 2015, Google and Facebook were actually scammed out of more than $100 million. In this case here, the scammer posted as Quanta Computers, a company that had been trading with Facebook and Google for years. The scammer created fake email accounts to pose as employees from Quanta Computers and sent phishing emails with fake invoices that had payment details leading to bank accounts that were set up by the phisher. The finance employees who received the emails were accustomed to processing multi-million-dollar transactions with Quanta Computers, and they lacked the requirements for direct approval by a purchaser. In this case, if you don't have stringent approval workflows in place, picking up a scam like this can be nearly impossible for a finance team to identify. So in this case, $100 million worth of fraud. Now we know that large enterprises are susceptible to fraud, but it begs the question whether this is a problem for the small and medium-sized business community. To answer that question, we refer to a study done by the Association of Finance Professionals. The research found that 82% of organizations in North America were victims of some form of payment fraud, expense abuse schemes, or serious wastage, which is a 20% increase from 2014. Meaning not only are small and medium-sized businesses susceptible to fraud, but also that these sort of schemes are on the rise, and the business community's response is lagging. The same year the study was conducted, more than $7 billion of losses were recorded in over 2,500 cases worldwide in 23 industries of businesses of all sizes. Of those cases, half of them were attributed to a flaw in the internal controls. So now that we've identified how companies are susceptible to fraud, waste, and abuse, what is the most common ways companies can be taken advantage of? So we'll go over a few of those here. The first one is expense abuse. So this is where an employee may submit expenses or use a company credit card for purchases that aren't related to the business or may be over their approved expenditure. Examples we have seen include employees trying to claim grocery shopping as an employee expense or spending significantly more than the amount of their travel expense on food and drinks. From 2011 to 2014, a manager of a Canadian software company managed to defraud her company $6 million by abusing the corporate credit card. Since she was the sole approver, no one was checking over her expenses. We always recommend having at least 2 layers of approval for every expense and moving up the management chain, not down. The next one is phishing scams. So this was a scheme used by a perpetrator who managed to extract the $100 million from Google and Facebook. And it's an attempt to access a company's account or fraudulently gain access to sensitive information. You may have come across this when a certain email might appear to be legitimate in an attempt to collect or steal personal information. And the third one here is duplicate payments. Duplicate payments sound like the most harmless form of waste, but it's actually one of the most common ways companies get taken advantage of. This is especially true in economic downturns when some small vendors may be tempted to slip in an extra invoice to make up for a shortfall in the regular orders. So how do you prevent fraud and abuse? Or how do you catch a fisherman? Here we go over some steps any finance team can take to ensure they have controls in place and to limit their vulnerability to fraud and abuse. The first recommendation is to increase awareness of how phishing scams work. The most common sign is that an email is related to a scam is the domain. Domain addresses are unique, but intelligent fraudsters will purchase domains that resemble their supplier domains. For example, in order to trick you, they may buy something such as paypal.payments.com, which is different than PayPal's own domain. The second recommendation we have here is to always require any purchase to be approved by the person who ordered the goods, as well as by their manager or someone else in the company who has that authority. Many companies include finance as a third layer of approval to ensure compliance around internal policies, and because finance often has the most knowledge of how fraudsters operate. And last but not least, when a vendor asks for their bank details to be changed, you should have processes in place for these kind of requests, such as requiring vendors to include bank change forms with the first invoice they supplied. That way you know that the bank request change is genuine and has been seen by multiple people in the company. Perhaps if Google and Facebook had implemented some sort of measures like these ones here, they may not have been prey to the phishing scheme that cost them $100 million. So we partnered with Level Research at the end of last year to look into the trends of AP fraud and how to prevent it. Here you can see the results of that research, highlighting the top AP pain points that organizations suffer from. While having the capacity to catch phishing schemes is extremely important in today's climate, it takes a backseat to the fundamentals of ensuring compliance to payment policies, and identifying duplicate payments. So let's now take a quick poll to see if your challenges match up the data from the research. So I'll just share this poll here on screen. So what are your top AP challenges? And you can select as many as you like. We've got invoice to payment matching, reliance on manual or paper-based processes, duplicate payments, tampering with financial reporting, and compliance and regulatory reporting. So please get your votes in. You can select one or multiple of the options and then submit, and then I'll be able to share the results afterwards. and we'll leave it open another 5 or 10 seconds. All right. Excellent. So thank you everyone for voting. I'm just going to share the results on screen. So the top AP challenges, it looks like duplicate payments led the way for our attendees today, followed closely by reliance on manual or paper-based processes. So I'll make sure that we touch upon both of those today. And before we move on to the next slide, we have a quick tip here for you before we jump into how we can address some of these concerns through AP automation. That tip is to look at using Positive Pay with your bank. Positive Pay is an automatic fraud detection tool offered by most of the cash management departments in major banks. In its simplest form, it's a service that matches the account number, check number, and dollar amount of each check and to a payment list that is previously authorized and issued by the company. So we have some clients that use Positive Pay, and the great news is AP automation also does support Positive Pay. So now we've gone through some of these major challenges, so let's address how AP automation can help eliminate some of those challenges. Most companies that digitize their process are interested in the time savings and elimination of paper, which naturally follows. But one of the advantages of moving into an accounts payable system in the cloud is that there's also an immeasurable upswing in the sophistication of controls that your organization will have access to. As we identified earlier, one of the most common ways fraudsters take advantage of AP debts is by sliding invoices through the cracks in a company's accounts payable control. By deploying AP automation, you can ensure no invoice gets through the armor without multi-level approval, significantly reducing fraud risk. Secondly, expense abuse, while less gregarious, is more common and difficult to manage because of the high volume of requests and need for regulatory compliance. With AP automation, you can easily ensure your employees have the appropriate documentation attached to every purchase, and that unapproved purchases will make it through, and that no unapproved purchases make it through to your bottom line. It's also shocking that in today's day and age, companies are still mistakenly paying duplicate invoices, and we've identified that with our attendee list today as being that is the largest of the challenges. We've solved this problem by ensuring our system is in constant communication with Sage so that we can flag potential duplicates. Once we flag the invoice as a duplicate, it'll be identified by a red icon next to the invoice that will say duplicate invoice. And in big, bold lettering up here, it will show that there's a duplicate invoice to make sure that we don't process that invoice twice by accident. In summary, 3 of the main ways that AP automation reduces risk are allowing you to create the most secure approval channels possible without any concerns around the time it'll take to manage, since it'll be all automated, and automatically flagging duplicate payments to avoid waste. And thirdly, ensuring you have the appropriate documentation for every purchase to limit the potential for paying unauthorized expenses. And so we've talked about fraud, we've talked about its effect on companies and the way fraudsters attempt to gain access to your financials. And then we also went over some ways to mitigate fraud. So I'll next give you a quick walkthrough of what we were discussing, AP automation as a tool to mitigate fraud. Great. Great. So I first wanted to give you a general overview of the system structure at a high level, and then we can go into each of the modules in a little bit more detail. So the first module here is purchase orders, and then invoices, and then payments. And each of the three modules is going to be designed in a very similar way. So for example, here within invoices will flow from left to right through these tabs at the top. They will move from create to in progress to approvals to export and then to archived in that order. And that works around the same in each module. So for example, payments is a very similar workflow, but in blue. So the goal is to make it very easy and user-friendly for users to pick up and learn the system. In the center of each screen is your workspace, and on the left-hand side, we've got filters at the top and the organization structure. So this is where we can replicate your organization with the structure here. So if you have multiple entities, multiple companies, multiple departments or divisions, that can be structured here to replicate that. And so if you have some users who only work within a certain entity or department, you can give them access. So let's say they're within Green Bean Co. and marketing. You can give them access so when they log on, that is all they'll see. Their own department and their own entity. Whereas from your point of view, for the AP team or for management, you can select all to view all the AP all on one screen for the entire organization. Or you can drill down to a specific entity or location just by clicking through the bubbles. And in the same way, the tabs at the top can be restricted by user. So if you have someone who just handles approvals, we can give them access to just view the approvals tab. That way they won't see anything else. They can easily log in, approve and reject their invoices, and then be finished. With AP automation, we allow unlimited users. So you can have as many users as you like within the system. It doesn't have to relate to who has access to your Sage software. All right, so we'll start at the beginning here with the purchase order. So I'll note as well, not everyone does have a purchase order process within their organization. So if you do not, you can skip over this part of the demonstration. And then with purchase orders, we actually have two different ways it can work. We can either create POs within our system here, which is what I'll walk through today. Or if you are currently creating purchase orders within Sage, we can actually import those directly in from your Sage software in order to match them up within our system. So in this case here, if we are using the AP automation system for purchase orders, the purchase order creator can create a PO here within the Create tab. They can select a vendor, and this will pull in your list of vendors directly in from the dropdown, directly from Sage. They can select things like a delivery date and a description. And then they can fill out the line items below. So again, things like the account code list will pull in directly in from Sage. So they can even just type in any word for the name, let's say the word cleaning here to find their cleaning expense account. Then they can fill in the totals. At this point, they can click Save or Submit for approval. And if they were to click Save, that will move that purchase order on to the In Progress tab. So if we open up one of the ones in Progress, we can see the system's actually created a visualization of that PO. It'll assign a PO number, a date, a vendor address, and the items of the line items will be visualized like this. So at this point, the user can add backup pages if they need to, backup documentation, or they can add additional line items. Or if it's good to go out for approval, they can click Submit for approval to move it on to the next step. At the approval stage, the purchase order approver, they can approve all in one go or reject. Or instead, they can go into each one, they can review the details of that PO, the line items, and then they can click approve or reject here. And if they do click reject, they're required to leave a comment. And once that purchase order is fully approved, it moves into what's called the committed tab. This is where all those open POs will live, awaiting invoices to match up against them. So it'll show you the total amount, the amount that's been drawn down, and the amount that's remaining. So you can open these POs to view them and to view their history. And then after that, our close tab acts as your historical archive of all the POs that have gone through the system. So next we'll move on to the invoice module. And if you are using POs, I'll be able to show you how that invoice match takes place as well. So the first step is going to be to get invoices into the system. So there's going to be a few different methods those can come in. Invoices can be scanned in, emailed in, or if you have the mobile app on your phone, you can just snap a photo. So if we were to scan them in, we could upload a file here, and you can scan in a stack of 10 invoices or 100, it's up to you. It will bring in those all at once here. We can click auto split to move each invoice onto a separate line, or if we have some multi-page invoices, we can drag and drop as needed. Then click save and create. And for emailed invoices, we can provide you with an email address to receive those into. And so those emailed invoices will come directly into the system. So next is the in progress tab. Invoices will come in here by next business day with the data already captured for you. So that includes things like the vendor name, the invoice number, the PO number if there is one, the dates, due dates, subtotals, totals, and taxes. As well, you'll see an image of the invoice, and if there is a PO, it will match up side by side, just like this one here. So AP automation will capture the majority of that data from the invoice, leaving just a GL and line item coding, and I'll be able to show you how we can do that in one of a couple different ways. The first way is if you are coding to a PO, you can pull that coding directly off the PO by clicking this PO adoption button. And then we can select which code we'd like to adopt, and then click adopt to pull the coding directly off the PO. Or if there's not a PO and you receive an invoice from a particular vendor, and the next month you receive another invoice from the same vendor, if that's going to be coded the same way, all you'll need to do is click Smart Code in the top right, and that will populate the GL and line item coding of how that was coded last time to save your team from having to enter that coding again. And lastly, if it is going to be coded differently, or maybe we click Smart Code and then realize it had to be changed, your users can go into any of these fields and change whichever field they wish at this stage and in progress. So if they want to change the account code, this again will flow in directly in from Sage. So they can select the correct account code, or if they want to add additional items, that can be done, as well as splitting by percentages or by equal parts. At this stage, they can also add backup documentation, and that will live beneath the invoice on your backup pages here. So once that coding is complete, we'll click Submit for approval to move that on to the next step. So the approvers for the invoice, they would get a notification either on the mobile app or by email that there's something to approve. So they can select all and batch approve or reject. Or again, they can go into each one in more detail, similar to the PO module. But in this case, they can view the invoice alongside the PO, the header coding, the line item coding, and then they can just click approve or reject here. We allow you to leave comments, and in the case of rejecting an invoice, you're required to leave a comment. So next, I'll show how we can actually set up those approval channels to determine who will approve what. So as we mentioned earlier, this is going to be one of the crucial fraud prevention techniques, is ensuring that you do have robust approval channels. So with AP automation, you can create as many approval channels as you like. I've got a whole list of them here. So for example, if I open one of them, each of these boxes will be a set of rules. In this case, I've got a dollar range between $1,000 and $2,000. I've got it related to a specific department. And then lists from Sage can be pulled in here as well. So for example, your vendor list, your account code list, you can run the approvals off of different GL accounts if you like. In this case, with this set of rules, I can choose who it will go to. So as we talked about earlier, having a more robust approval channel process means often having multiple approvers. So possibly we want it to go to, let's say, first a manager, so we can have it go, let's say, first to Rob, and then maybe to someone in finance after. So in this case, this will go to Rob, then Tom. If we wanted to add a third step, we can have it go to our CEO, Jill, third. What we can also do is create group approvals. That means if we put multiple people in a group together like this, any one of them can approve. So this will go first to Rob, then to Tom, then to either Jack or to Jill. So these are some of the ways we can set up those approval channels, and it's really limitless. You can have as many channels as you like, and you can even have rules that overlap. This is really one of the primary sources of fraud prevention and ensuring that you have a proper tool of approval in order for those invoices to get into both your financial system and later on an approval for payment before it's been paid. Next, once those invoices are fully approved, they will move on to our export tab. So this is the step here to get those invoices back into Sage. All you'll need to do is click Actions in the top right. We'll click Export Data. What that does is that will push all this invoice data back into Sage for you. So it'll create the batch within the AP module. And with Sage, we have what's called the sync tool. It runs in the background. It communicates with your Sage software. And it runs on the schedule. So that schedule can be customized, or you can run it on command to keep the two systems updated. Finally is our archive tab. So in here, you'll be able to see all the invoices that have gone through the system, and everything will be stored for a period of at least 7 years. So you'll have access to everything in here if you do need to search up any invoices. You can run filters on the left-hand side, for example, by amount, account, vendor name, date range, dollar value, etc. We can open up those invoices like this to view them, to view the invoice, the PO, its history, and its details. And we can also run reports. So in the top right here, I can choose to run either a CSV or a PDF report. I'll just generate a PDF report with everything that's on this page to show you what it looks like. And I'll open up that report. The first page here will show you a summary of everything that was selected. In this case, we've got a big selection of 28 invoices. So we can either scroll through this report if we'd like, or to make things easy, we can just click on the hyperlink to bring us down to that page. It will show us an image of the invoice here, the header coding at the top, the line item coding below, the approval history to show us who approved it and when, and an image of the PO if there was a PO attached. So this is another crucial step of fraud is being able to view your audit trail, view an invoice from 6 months ago, find out who approved it and when and what it was coded to. You'll have access to these reports at your fingertips, so you can run and generate them whenever you like. You can even save filters for later by naming a filter here if you'd like to name it to go back to that filter for later. And so the next step here is going to be for payments. Payments are optional within AP automation. However, the majority of our clients do use us for payments as it does simplify the entire process. And it does incorporate those added elements of fraud prevention that we were talking about earlier. So if you do use us for payments, payments will come automatically into the Create tab here. And so this is where AP automation does the automatic invoice to payment matching. So we'll be able to match up invoices to your payments in here. It will show you what you need to pay, your age payables list of what's 30, 60, 90, and over 90 days due. It will also group together those payments by vendor. If we have multiple payments for one vendor, it can group them together. So we can select what we'd like to pay and then click Create. Those payments follow a similar workflow to the other modules. So next is in progress. We'd be able to change the bank account it's coming from if we have multiple accounts, or we can set that payment for auto release. What that means is if it's set for auto release, it'll be automatically released to the vendor once it has been approved. Next, we have an approval process for your payments. So this is a very important step. We have approval processes for purchase orders, invoices, and payments. The one at payments is primarily to give that authorization before the payment is sent out. So the payment approver, they can come in here and review the details of the payment and then click approve or reject. And that will be the equivalent of them actually authorizing that check to be sent out or the electronic ACH or EFT to be sent out as well. Finally, the releases tab is where those payments can be sent out to the vendors. This can be automated and they can be sent out automatically, or we can select what we'd like to send and click release. And what that does is that will automatically send out the payments directly to the vendors. So the payment methods we offer are going to be standard check. That's where we can send a physical check directly in the mail to your vendor. Or an electronic payment, that's going to be something like an ACH or EFT. We can send that to your vendor's account. And our third method is a virtual credit card. That's going to be an email that we'll send to the vendor with a unique credit card number. They'll run it through as a MasterCard payment. Any advantage is we can offer a cashback rebate on the virtual card payments. And then finally is the Pay tab. This is where we again complete that sync back with Sage in order to update your system and to mark all those invoices as paid and create the payment batch within your Sage software. So we've done a really high level overview of purchase orders, invoices, and payments. We do offer more personalized overviews or demonstrations of the software if you'd like to have a demonstration tailored to your organization and to your own workflow. But for now, we'll bring it back to our slides, and then we'll open up the floor for question and answer. So if you do have any questions, please type into the Q&A section. So there's a special question and answer section of the Zoom. So please do enter your questions now, and I'll be able to go through them. All right, so I guess I got a couple questions already. So the first question I have here is, can you show the duplicate detection you were talking about earlier? So great question, and I'll show you what that looks like within the software as we just spoken about it earlier. So for the duplicate detection, that will identify invoices that's been flagged as duplicate based on their invoice number and vendor. So on this list here, I can see a couple of these here have this red duplicate symbol. So if I click on one of them, it pulls up both invoices that have been flagged as duplicate. So I can go in here and I can, for example, maybe I want to delete one of them. But if not, if I go into it, I still have this red warning at the top that warns me that there's a duplicate invoice that's been detected. So I won't be processing that accidentally. I'll have this big warning here that there is a duplicate. All right, and another question here was about payments. Do the payments come directly from my account? Are they drawn as a lump sum or individually? So that's another great question that comes up frequently. For your payments, if you did want to run your payments through here, those payments will come in here, and once they're released, they'll actually come out of your account on a one-to-one relationship. So that means if you're sending out 10 payments, that'll be 10 transactions on your account. So that way you can easily reconcile with your bank statement of what payments are coming out. And one more question here was regarding payments is what payment methods are supported. So I briefly touched upon that, but I'll mention it again. Within our system, you can make payments via standard check. That's where we print and send a check directly from our payment partner to your vendor. By electronic payments, so that's an EFT or ACH. And the third method is by virtual credit card. And you also have the option to make payments directly from Sage. And because we have a two-way sync, that will let you make payments from Sage, and they will be reflected in here, so you won't be prompted to pay those twice. And it looks like I've got just 2 questions left. So if there's any others, please message them into the Q&A. So one of them here is what kind of customer support is included? So with all of our plans, we include unlimited customer support. So we have a team based in Vancouver, so they're locally. We don't outsource our support. And they are available from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time in order to assist. So you can reach them by phone, by email, or my favorite way is actually right in the software here. You can click Get Help. And you can start a conversation with our support team directly here. And then the final question that I've got in here, so if there's any more, please enter them in, is how long does it take to get set up? So that's another great question. Our setup process is generally 3 main meetings. The first is to do the integration. That's where we can integrate AP automation with your Sage software. The second meeting is to go over and customize your workflows, things like approval channels and purchase orders. And then the third meeting is a training session for you and your team. So on average, our clients are probably live within around 1 to 3 weeks. However, it is really just those three main meetings, around 4 to 6 hours of total time. And that can be done, I've seen it done in as quick as a day or two, so it can even be on the quicker side, but around 1 to 3 weeks is probably the most common amount of time it takes to get set up. And for everyone here, I've left my own contact details as well as Rob's contact details here. If you do have any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Otherwise, Rob and his team will be able to reach out if you do have any questions or if you did want to schedule a more personalized demonstration. So that's all I've got. I'm not sure if Rob had anything else to mention before we end it off, but thank you everyone for joining to the webinar today of how to prevent against accounts payable fraud. Look forward to chatting again soon.